alone at 33. They laughed in front of the relatives, completely unaware that I was the one who approved every light, every flower, every ring, and every invoice for their dream wedding. That night at the rehearsal, I set my pen to one final document, not a floral contract, but a cancellation notice with immediate payment demand for the person who'd used my name as fraudulent collateral. When I revealed I owned the venue, Mother went silent, Father stammered, and my brother, their golden child, couldn't even read the penalty clause. That was just step one. My name is Nova Hartley, and at 33, I've become the family's favorite cautionary tale about women who wait too long. The pre-wedding dinner stretched before me like a theater stage, complete with tungsten lights casting their sickly yellow glow across the private dining room at the Aspen Lodge. Mother's wineglass trembled slightly in her manicured grip, her third Chablis of the evening. The sound of silverware against porcelain created a metallic symphony that made my teeth ache. Aunt Patricia leaned into her husband, stage whispering loud enough for the entire table of 23 relatives to hear, "Poor Marla, it must be so hard watching Colton get married while Nova is still, well, you know, still alone at 33. Mother's voice cut through the murmurs, sharp as the Henkel's knives she'd gifted me for my 30th birthday, because every woman needs good kitchen tools, even if she's not feeding a family yet. She laughed, that practiced country club titter that never quite reached her eyes. Our Nova prefers flowers to people, don't you, sweetheart? She's a wedding planner. Isn't that ironic? Father, Roy Hartley of Hartley Construction, a name that carried weight in Maple Canyon's development circles, adjusted his tie and added his contribution. At least she gets to attend plenty of weddings, even if they're not her own. The table erupted in uncomfortable laughter, the kind that people produce when they're witnessing a public execution but don't want to appear rude. I smiled, cutting into my duck confit with surgical precision. The meat separated from the bone effortlessly, much like how I'd separated my real life from the fictional narrative they'd constructed about me. They saw a single woman who played with centerpieces for a living, someone who'd failed to achieve the paramount accomplishment of securing a husband by the acceptable age. They didn't see the woman who'd spent the last 5 years building something extraordinary. Speaking of weddings, Colton interjected, his arm draped possessively around his fiancée Layla's shoulders. We're viewing venues this week. The Mill at Silverfield is at the top of our list. Have you heard of it? Nova. It's apparently the hottest booking in Colorado right now, completely transformed from some old paper mill. I took a measured sip of water, letting the ice clink against my teeth. I've heard good things. Good things? Mother scoffed. It's revolutionary. Margaret Ashford's daughter had her reception there last month. She said the owner is some mysterious figure, very exclusive. Everything goes through their management company. She turned to me with that practiced look of pity. Maybe you could learn something from their business model. Dear. Though I suppose arranging grocery store carnations for budget weddings has its place too. My phone vibrated against my thigh. Without looking, I knew what it was, the automated system forwarding me another inquiry. This one, however, made my pulse quicken when I glanced down discreetly. From Marla Hartley, subject, urgent premium wedding venue. Inquiry, the Mill at Silverfield. Dear events team, I am writing on behalf of my son, Colton Hartley, of Sable Ridge Developments. The email continued in my peripheral vision as Uncle Stuart launched into his third story about his golf handicap. Mother had no idea she'd just sent a formal request to her own daughter. The LLC structure I'd meticulously crafted Willow and Stone Holdings had worked exactly as intended. 3 layers of legal separation between Nova Hartley, the family disappointment, and N. Walsh, the enigmatic owner of Colorado's most sought-after wedding venue. You know what I think, Cousin Beth chimed in, her voice syrupy with false concern. Nova's just too picky. At her age, she needs to be more realistic about her options. I folded my napkin, placing it beside my plate with the same care I used when reviewing contracts. The industrial bones of the mill exposed brick, steel beams, soaring windows flashed through my mind. Every carefully restored detail, every modern amenity seamlessly integrated into the historical structure, every premium package priced at exactly what the Maple Canyon elite would pay to impress each other. "You're absolutely right, Beth," I said, my voice steady as poured concrete. "I should definitely be more realistic about my options." Mother raised her glass in a mock toast. "To Colton and Layla, and their beautiful future, and to Nova, may she find whatever it is she's looking for." As glasses clinked around the table, I felt my phone buzz again. Another email, this time from Colton himself, using his Sable Ridge corporate account. The subject line alone told me everything. Partnership opportunity, venue, sponsorship, mutual benefits. Already trying to leverage a venue he hadn't even booked yet. How perfectly characteristic. I stood, smoothing my dress a simple black sheath that Mother had criticized as funeral appropriate when I'd arrived. "If you'll excuse me, I need to respond to a client. At 8:45 in the evening." Father frowned. "This is family time. Nova. Some of us have to work harder to make up for our deficiencies," I replied, meeting his gaze directly. "Isn't that what you always taught me?" The silence that followed tasted like possibilities. The smell of fresh paint and sawdust still haunts my dreams, sometimes not as a nightmare, but as a reminder of where I came from. At 7 years old, I watched Father teach Colton how to read blueprints in his study, while Mother enrolled me in Eleanor Fitzgerald's Academy of Social Graces. "Ladies don't need to understand construction," she'd said, smoothing my hair into painful French braids. "They need to understand table settings and thank you notes." By 14, while Colton shadowed Father at construction sites every summer, I was arranging centerpieces for Mother's charity luncheons. What they never noticed was how I'd redesigned the entire flow of our house's main floor in my head, calculating traffic patterns and sightlines while they praised my lovely carnation arrangements. I learned to smile and nod, filing away every dismissive comment like evidence for a future trial. College became my escape hatch. While my parents believed I was pursuing a suitable degree in hospitality management at State, I'd actually enrolled in experience architecture and business administration at the University of Colorado Boulder. The program didn't officially exist. I'd created it myself through a dual degree petition, combining spatial design, business law, and behavioral psychology. My transcript read like a manifesto commercial real estate law, advanced contract negotiations, LLC structuring and asset protection, architectural history, and something called transformative space psychology that I'd convinced a visiting professor from Denmark to supervise. The bartending job they mocked me for taking, our daughter serving drinks like common help, taught me more about business than Colton learned in his MBA program. I worked the closing shifts at the Velvet Room, an upscale cocktail bar in Denver's Rhino District, between mixing $15 Manhattans. I studied profit and loss statements, memorized supplier contracts, and learned how to read people's credit card statements upside down. The owner, James, a former Goldman Sachs analyst who'd burned out at 35, taught me about shell companies and asset protection over inventory counts at 3 in the morning. "Never let them see your real cards. Nova," he'd said, teaching me to layer LLCs like phyllo dough, especially if them includes family. The mill at Silverfield came to me like a fever dream in February of 2019. I'd been driving back from another humiliating family dinner where Mother had tried to set me up with her podiatrist's recently divorced son. The "For Sale by Bank" sign was barely visible through the snow, nailed to a chain-link fence around what looked like an abandoned disaster. The 100-year-old paper mill sat on 12 acres of riverside property, its bones good but its skin rotting. The research consumed me. Tax records showed 3 failed purchases in 5 years. Environmental studies came back clean. The paper mill had closed in the 70s before the worst chemicals became standard. The structure was sound. A previous investor had reinforced it before running out of money. The bank held a $2.3 million lien, but they'd been sitting on it for 18 months. They wanted it gone. I incorporated Willow and Stone Holdings in Delaware on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I'd convinced 17 micro-investors from a Reddit real estate forum to contribute $50,000 each. The pitch was simple historical renovation, event space, the Instagram generation's appetite for industrial charm. I never mentioned weddings specifically, but I didn't need to. The Harbor Light Lending Company covered the rest with a bridge loan at 11% usurious, but I knew I could refinance within 18 months once we had bookings. The renovation took 14 months of 16-hour days. I learned to read architectural plans properly, not the simplified versions Father had shown Colton. I hired contractors from outside Maple Canyon, paying cash bonuses for discretion. While my family thought I was playing with flowers at various wedding venues, I was actually selecting reclaimed wood from a 19th century railroad depot, negotiating with the Historical Society for tax credits, and installing a commercial kitchen that could pass military-grade inspections. The soft opening in September of 2020 was invitation-only influencers, wedding bloggers, and 3 carefully selected society mavens from Denver who I knew would spread the word back to Maple Canyon. I appeared at the event as an assistant to the owner, serving champagne and deflecting questions about the mysterious N. Walsh who'd transformed this ruin into Colorado's most photographed venue. The business model was bulletproof. Every contract included a force majeure clause, a 35% penalty for fraudulent representations, and something I particularly enjoyed, a comprehensive audit right. Payments went through escrow only. No exceptions. The LLC structure meant that Nova Hartley's name appeared nowhere, not even on the liquor license. By the time I sat at that family dinner, watching Mother email me without knowing it, the mill at Silverfield had grossed $3.8 million in its second year of operation. We had bookings through 2027. The loan was paid off. I owned it free and clear. They thought I was alone at 33, arranging grocery store flowers for budget weddings. In reality, I'd built an empire they drove past every day without recognizing. The mill's distinctive roofline was visible from Father's office, from Colton's development sites, from Mother's country club terrace. The sweetest part. Every society wedding they attended, every event they praised, every exclusive venue they name-dropped, half of them happened under my roof. I'd served them champagne at their own friends' children's receptions, invisible in my role as the help, listening to them complain about their disappointment of a daughter while standing in the very monument to my success. The email from Mother sat in my priority inbox like a wrapped gift. I responded as N. Walsh at 6:15 a.m. the next morning, knowing she'd appreciate the early timestamp. Successful people don't sleep in, as she'd drilled into me since childhood. Dear Mrs. Hartley, thank you for your inquiry regarding the mill at Silverfield. We would be delighted to discuss the Emerald package for your son's upcoming celebration. Please find attached our comprehensive proposal, including venue specifications, preferred vendor list, and investment terms. I'd crafted the language carefully. Investment terms instead of payment schedule, speaking their language of transactions and returns rather than mere expenses. The attachment included 40 pages of meticulously designed documentation, the kind of thoroughness that would make Father nod approvingly if he knew his daughter had created it. The Emerald package started at $75,000, not including additions. But buried in subsection 7C, I'd inserted my first trap. Client must provide affidavit of funds with supporting documentation. Any misrepresentation constitutes material breach, triggering immediate acceleration of all payments plus 35% penalty on total contract value. Subsection 7D was even better. In events where a third-party guarantor is utilized, said party assumes joint and several liability for all obligations, penalties, and consequential damages. Mother's reply came within 2 hours, gushing about the exceptional attention to detail and requesting a site visit. I scheduled them for the following Thursday at 2 p.m., knowing I had a Zoom call with suppliers that would give me an excuse to be off-site during their tour. But first, I had preparations to make. Wednesday evening, I sat in my home office, a converted loft in Denver's Highlands neighborhood that my family had never visited, listening through my AirPods to Colton's conference call. He'd been careless with his Sable Ridge email password, still using his college football number combination, the same one he'd used for everything since high school. "The Meadowbrook project is bleeding us," he told someone named Derek from Bridgewater Equity Partners. But once we close the 6th Street deal, we can move funds around, make it look stable for the quarterly report. I screenshot the email chain that followed, where he outlined what any first-year law student would recognize as fraud: moving funds between projects to hide losses, using new investor money to pay old debts, a shell game that would collapse the moment someone looked closely. Thursday arrived gray and drizzling, perfect weather for what I had planned. I stationed myself in the administrative office, a glass cube suspended above the main floor where I could see everything but remain unseen. My assistant manager, Kai, led the tour, wearing the charcoal suit I'd selected specifically for its authoritative cut. Through the security monitors, I watched Mother run her fingers along the restored brick walls, Father inspect the steel beam construction with obvious approval, and Colton mentally calculating square footage. "The owner insists on complete transparency," Kai explained, leading them through the caterer's kitchen. "Every vendor payment tracked, every deposit held in escrow until service delivery. Ms. Walsh believes that financial integrity is the foundation of memorable celebrations." "Quite right," Father agreed, though I knew he'd mock such precision as feminine overthinking if he thought I'd implemented it. Then Colton made his move, exactly as I'd predicted. He pulled Kai aside near the loading dock, out of his parents' earshot but perfectly captured by the camera I'd installed specifically for that blind spot. "Between us," he said, sliding a Sable Ridge business card across the table, "I could bring significant corporate events here, galas, product launches, investor parties, but I'd need to see some flexibility on the wedding package. Maybe we structure it as a sponsorship opportunity, some cash under the table to make both our numbers look better." Kai maintained perfect composure, as I'd trained him. "I'll certainly pass that along to ownership. Mr. Hartley." That evening, I sent Colton a separate email from N. Walsh. "Mr. Hartley, thank you for your interest in corporate partnerships. Please note that all financial arrangements must comply with Section 15903 of Colorado's Commercial Bribery Statute. We've included relevant IRS reporting requirements in the attached form. Additionally, any sponsorship agreements require disclosure to all parties named in the primary contract, including guarantors." The threat was clear: try to cheat me, and I'll report you to the IRS and tell your parents. But wrapped in enough corporate speak that he couldn't claim harassment. His response was predictably aggressive. "I don't think you understand how business works at this level. The Hartley name carries weight in this state. We could make things difficult for a venue that doesn't play ball." I saved that email to 3 different servers. Friday morning brought the dance I'd been waiting for. Mother called the venue directly, hoping to negotiate. She got Kai again. "I'm sure Ms. Walsh would appreciate that the Hartley family has certain expectations," she said, her country club voice sharp enough to cut glass. "We're not average clients." "Of course not. Mrs. Hartley, that's why Ms. Walsh has personally flagged your file for enhanced verification protocols. Given Mr. Colton Hartley's position in real estate development, we'll need a comprehensive audit of funding sources. It's the same process we use for all high-profile clients, I'm sure you understand." Through the phone tap I'd legally placed on our business line, I heard her sharp intake of breath. The implication was clear: we know who you are, and we're watching more carefully because of it. That weekend, I received an anonymous tip from Marcus, a photographer I'd worked with before. He forwarded me texts from Colton. "The mill's being difficult. After the wedding, I'll spread word they're impossible to work with. I'll have them begging for corporate contracts within 6 months. I added it to my growing file, then crafted my masterstroke. The notice to verify funds went out Monday morning, requiring completion within 72 hours. Standard procedure, but the timing was specific. I knew from Colton's hacked emails that he was flying to Vegas Tuesday for a development conference that was actually a desperate attempt to find new investors. He'd have to have Mother sign as guarantor. And once she did, she'd be legally liable for every lie he told. The golden key charm on her keychain, the one she'd carried since Colton gave it to her when he graduated from MBA school, inscribed with Hartley's Build Legacies, showed up in every photo she sent of table settings she liked. A tiny detail that would mean nothing to anyone else. But to me, it was a reminder of every time she'd chosen him over me, every opportunity I'd been denied because I wasn't the right gender to carry on the Hartley name. Now that same name would be the trap that caught them both. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for the Thursday before the Saturday wedding, a Hartley family tradition that I'd once found charming. Now, standing in the mill's main hall at 4:30 p.m., adjusting Edison bulb strings that cast honeyed light across the reclaimed pine floors, I saw it for what it was, a stage for their performance of family perfection. The space had never looked better. Every beam glowed with the warmth of carefully placed uplighting. The heritage brick walls seemed to pulse with history, while the modern glass installations reflected infinite versions of the scene. The scent of fresh pine mingled with the polish I'd personally selected bergamot and cedar, sophisticated but not overwhelming. I'd spent 3 years perfecting this alchemy of atmosphere. Ms. Walsh wants everything flawless, I told my team, staying in character even though most of them knew exactly who I was. The Hartley family has particular standards. At 5:45 p.m., they arrived in a convoy of luxury SUVs. Mother emerged first, her winter white coat pristine against the gray Colorado evening. She immediately began critiquing the entrance arrangement to Father, not knowing I could hear every word through the security system. "It's almost too rustic," she said. "I hope Nova doesn't think this is what elegance looks like." Father grunted his agreement, then added, "At least she's not here yet. Maybe she'll finally bring someone." That paralegal from her college reunion seemed interested. I moved to the administrative office, my glass tower sanctuary, and watched them filter in. Colton glad-handed every vendor, pressing business cards into palms with the desperation of a man whose credit lines were maxing out. Layla, the bride-to-be, seemed genuinely enchanted by the space, running her fingers along the restored industrial windows. "Isn't this magical?" she asked Colton. "It's overpriced," he muttered, checking his phone for the 100th time. Still no response from Vegas investors. I knew. I'd seen the rejection emails in his inbox that morning. At 6:15 p.m., the site walk began in earnest. I descended from my office, tablet in hand, appearing as just another manager checking details. Mother walked past me without a glance. I was furniture to her, a service person beneath notice. "The acoustic panels," Kai explained to the group, "were personally selected by Ms. Walsh. She tested 17 different materials before choosing these. They're reclaimed from a recording studio in Nashville, treated to preserve the natural wood while optimizing sound quality." "Obsessive," Father commented, though with a hint of approval. "Thorough," Kai corrected gently. "Ms. Walsh believes that if you're going to do something, you should do it completely." I stayed in the shadows, adjusting place cards that didn't need adjusting, watching Colton schmooze the lighting designer about partnership opportunities, while Layla discussed flower arrangements with our florist. Then I heard the conversation that changed everything. "Between you and me," Colton told our bar manager, Diego, "once this wedding's done, I'm pulling at least 5 corporate events from the Grand Pavilion and bringing them here, but I need some flexibility on the numbers. You understand? A little creative accounting never hurt anyone." Diego, professional to his core, simply nodded and said he'd make note of it. What Colton didn't know was that Diego's notes were being recorded by the body camera all our senior staff wore during vendor interactions, a policy I'd implemented after a previous client tried to claim we'd made verbal agreements. We hadn't. At 7 p.m., the contract review began in the library, a cozy space I'd designed with leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with vintage books about Colorado history. The irony of signing their financial destruction surrounded by stories of frontier justice wasn't lost on me. Mother signed as guarantor without reading past page 2. "I trust this is all standard," she said, her signature flowing across the line with practiced elegance. The golden key charm on her keychain caught the light as she wrote, glinting like a warning she couldn't see. "Quite standard," Kai assured her, though Ms. Walsh did want me to highlight the audit clause in Appendix C. Given the substantial value of the Emerald package, we require verification of funds within 72 hours of signing. "That won't be a problem," Colton interjected quickly. Too quickly. Sable Ridge Developments has excellent liquidity. I knew otherwise. The Bridgewater documents showed he was 30 days from default on 2 projects, juggling credit lines like flaming torches. His excellent liquidity was a mirage built on borrowed time and other people's money. "Wonderful," Kai said. "Then you won't mind providing the certified statements by Sunday at noon. The audit team is particularly thorough. They'll need to see 6 months of transactions to verify the funds aren't encumbered." Colton's jaw tightened, but with his parents watching, he couldn't object. Of course. At 7:45 p.m., during the lighting demonstration, I made my calculated appearance. Dressed in my best black suit, the one Mother had never seen because she'd never attended any of my professional events, I walked through the main hall, appearing to inspect the setup. "Oh," Mother said dismissively to Layla, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That must be one of the wedding planners who works here. Nova does similar work, though obviously not at this level. Still single. Can you believe it, 33 and arranging other people's happiness?" The words were meant to wound, had wounded me for years, but standing in my own venue, watching her sign contracts that would soon unravel everything, I felt nothing but calm satisfaction. At 8:30 p.m., I sent the notice to verify funds from my phone, still standing in the same room with them. Colton's phone buzzed immediately. I watched his face pale as he read it. "Everything all right?" Layla asked. "Just business," he managed, but his hand shook slightly as he typed his response. By 9 p.m., they were gone, gushing to each other about the venue's perfection, not knowing they'd just signed their names to their own unmaking. I stood in the empty hall, the Edison bulbs casting long shadows across the floor I'd personally restored, plank by plank. My phone buzzed. An anonymous tip from the photographer's assistant Colton had just asked him to provide a kickback receipt for services not rendered to pad his expense reports. The assistant had refused and immediately forwarded me the text exchange. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in the coffin he was building himself. I climbed back to my glass office and began drafting the email I'd send in exactly 71 hours and 59 minutes, when the verification deadline passed without compliance. The subject line would be simple: notice of material breach and acceleration of obligations. But that was Sunday's pleasure. Tonight, I had Edison bulbs to perfect and shadows to adjust. The stage needed to be flawless for the final act. Sunday arrived with the kind of crystalline Colorado morning that made lies harder to hide. At 11:59 a.m., 1 minute before the deadline, Colton's verification documents hit my inbox. Even at first glance, I could see the desperation in their construction. I forwarded everything to my legal counsel at Kestrel Legal Group, really just 2 ruthless former prosecutors who specialized in financial fraud. Within an hour, they'd assembled a devastating report. The account statements have been doctored. Rebecca from Kestrel told me over secure video. Look at the SWIFT codes, they don't match any legitimate institution. And this transaction history, someone used Photoshop but forgot to adjust the kerning on the numbers. Amateur hour. But the real gold mine came from their deeper dive into Sable Ridge Developments. Using only publicly available records and court filings, they'd uncovered a pattern of circular transactions that would make a Ponzi schemer blush. Colton had been moving the same $2 million between 4 different accounts, creating the illusion of liquidity while actually drowning in debt. "There's more," Rebecca continued. "We found records at Emerald Coast Casino. He's been drawing cash advances on the company credit cards, running them through the casino, then reporting them as client entertainment. That's federal wire fraud if it crosses state lines, which it does. I saved every document to 3 separate secure servers, then printed hard copies for my physical files. The evidence safe in my home office was getting crowded with Hartley family secrets. Monday morning. I initiated Clause 14B of the contract, the immediate hold on all venue services pending resolution of verification issues. The language was deliberately calm. Dear Mr. Hartley, our audit team has identified discrepancies requiring immediate clarification. Per Section 14B, all venue preparations are suspended until satisfactory resolution. You have 48 hours to cure these deficiencies or face contract termination with full penalty enforcement. Colton's response came within minutes, CCing a lawyer whose email signature was longer than his message. This is harassment and intentional interference with contract. We demand immediate continuation of services. I smiled, forwarding his threat to Kestrel. Rebecca called back laughing. He CC'd Tom Morrison. That guy lost his license in Wyoming for commingling client funds. He can't even practice in Colorado. Tuesday brought escalation. Mother called the venue 17 times before noon, each message more shrill than the last. This is completely unacceptable. Do you know who we are? The Hartley name means something in this state. I had Kai respond with perfectly corporate calm, Mrs. Hartley, as the guarantor on this contract, you're welcome to provide alternative verification of funds. However, please note that any fraudulent statements will trigger personal liability under Section 7D. That shut her up for exactly 3 hours. Then she tried a different approach, showing up at the mill with father in tow at 4 p.m. I watched from my office as they demanded to speak with the owner. Ms. Walsh is reviewing the situation personally, Kai told them. She takes financial integrity very seriously. In fact, she wanted me to share this. He handed them a printed email from that morning. I'd written it carefully, as in Walsh. After reviewing the submitted documentation, I have concerns that go beyond simple verification issues. The patterns identified suggest potential criminal liability. While I prefer to resolve matters privately, I have an obligation to report suspected fraud to appropriate authorities. Father's face went from red to white as he read. This is extortion. No, sir, Kai replied. It's contract enforcement, the same kind your construction company uses. I'd imagine. Wednesday morning, the dam broke. My source at Bridgewater Equity Partners, a junior analyst who'd gone to school with me and remembered how my family treated me at graduation, sent me an internal memo. Sable Ridge Developments placed on immediate funding, hold pending investigation of accounting irregularities. The casino had also frozen Colton's corporate accounts after my anonymous tip about the cash advance scheme. The timing was perfect. He needed to pay 3 contractors by Friday or face mechanics' liens on his current projects. At 2 p.m., I received a call from Layla, the bride. Her voice was steady but strained. I need to understand what's happening. Colton won't tell me anything, just keeps saying it's a misunderstanding. I had Kai transfer her to me, speaking as in Walsh for the first time. Ms. Pierce, I believe you deserve transparency. Would you be willing to review some documents you're named as a potential beneficiary in this wedding contract, which gives you certain rights to information? Yes, she said immediately. Yes, please. I sent her everything, the doctored statements, the casino records, the circular transactions, even the text messages about kickbacks and threats against the venue. For good measure, I included the security footage of Colton propositioning my staff for illegal arrangements. Her response came 2 hours later. I need to see the full contract. Specifically, what happens if I want to proceed without him? The hunter in me recognized another hunter. Layla wasn't just pretty arm candy, she was protecting herself. I sent her the assignment clause, highlighting Section 22C. In the event of proven fraud by one party, innocent co-beneficiaries may assume full control of the contract without penalty, provided they can demonstrate legitimate funding sources. Thursday morning, Kestrel Legal delivered their final report, a 30-page document detailing potential criminal violations, complete with statutory references and sentencing guidelines. Mail fraud, wire fraud, Tax evasion. Fraudulent conveyance. Colton had hit the white-collar crime bingo card. But the crown jewel was something Rebecca found in the LLC filings. Colton had listed Mother as a silent partner in Sable Ridge Developments, giving her 20% ownership. She'd signed the papers without reading them, probably thinking she was helping her golden child. That signature made her criminally liable for everything. I scheduled the rehearsal dinner for 6 p.m., sending a message through Kai, Ms. Walsh will be attending personally to discuss resolution options. Please have all parties present. Then I placed 3 calls, one to the photographer to ensure every moment would be captured, one to my bartender to keep the champagne flowing, loosened tongues tell better truths, and one to myself, a reminder that after 3 years of planning, the moment had finally arrived. At 5:45 p.m., I stood in my office, looking down at the main hall filling with Hartleys and their guests. The Edison lights glowed like stars. I'd hung myself, one by one, dreaming of this moment. Mother's golden key charm caught the light as she gestured wildly at Father, no doubt complaining about the unprofessionalism of the situation. Colton paced near the bar, his phone pressed to his ear, probably begging another investor for an emergency bridge loan. Layla sat apart from them all, studying the documents I'd sent her on her tablet, her engagement ring catching the light each time she scrolled. At 6 p.m. exactly. I closed my laptop, smoothed my best black dress, the one Mother had never seen me wear because she'd never thought I had anywhere worth wearing it, and prepared to descend. The show was about to begin. The rain started at 5:58 p.m., a gentle percussion against the mill's restored windows that seemed to whisper, "It's time." I descended the floating steel staircase I'd personally designed, each step echoing through the main hall like a countdown. The Edison bulbs cast golden reflections in the Prosecco flutes lined up on the bar, trembling slightly from the vibration of my approach. The entire Hartley contingent had assembled 23 relatives, all here to celebrate Colton's triumph and, by extension, to witness my continued failure to achieve their definition of success. They didn't notice me at first, too busy clustered in their familiar formations, Mother holding court near the fireplace, Father examining the beam construction with Uncle Stuart, Colton frantically typing on his phone by the window. Still alone at 33, Aunt Patricia was saying to Cousin Beth, loud enough to carry, "Poor Nova, at least she gets to plan other people's happiness." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, letting the silence notice me first. Conversations faltered like dominoes falling backward, until all eyes turned to the woman in the black dress they didn't recognize. "Good evening," I said, my voice carrying across the space I'd rebuilt from ruins. "I'm in Walsh." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the rain's rhythm and the soft crash of Mother's Prosecco flute hitting the reclaimed pine floor. The golden key charm on her wrist caught the light as her hand went to her throat. "That's not possible," she whispered. I reached into my portfolio and withdrew a single business card, walking through the crowd that parted like a biblical sea, and handed it to her. Nova Walsh Hartley, owner, the mill at Silverfield, though I prefer just N. Walsh for business purposes. Father's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally, a rage that turned his neck purple. "This is some kind of joke." "No joke," I replied, pulling out my phone and projecting documents onto the white wall we used for presentations. LLC formation documents, dated February 2019. Deed of sale, March 2019. Business license, liquor license, tax records, all public information you could have found if you'd ever thought to look for what I was actually doing instead of what you assumed I was doing. Colton stepped forward, his lawyer's bravado kicking in. "This is entrapment. You deceived us." "Did I?" I clicked to the next slide, our email exchanges. "You contacted my venue. You signed contracts with full disclosure of terms. You submitted fraudulent documents of your own free will. At what point did I deceive you?" Layla stood up from her corner table, her tablet in hand. "May I?" I nodded, curious. She connected her device to the projection system with practiced ease, displaying the contract's assignment clause. According to Section 22C, in the event of fraud by one party, innocent co-beneficiaries may assume full control. I'm exercising that right. She turned to Colton, her engagement ring catching the light as she removed it. I also downloaded your real bank statements from the cloud you forgot I had access to. Your password is still Touchdown King 88, really. Colton. The room erupted. Mother's voice cut through the chaos. You cannot do this to family. Family, I laughed, and the sound echoed off the exposed brick. So, was it family when you enrolled me in etiquette classes while Colton learned the business? Was it family when you told everyone at my college graduation that at least I'd make someone a good secretary someday? Was it family when you literally stood in my own venue 5 days ago and mocked me for being single and childless? I clicked to the next slide, the security footage of Colton attempting to bribe my staff. Your golden boy tried to extort kickbacks from my vendors. He threatened to destroy my business if I didn't comply. That's what you call family. Father found his voice. You're destroying your brother's future over petty jealousy. No, I said, pulling up the Kestrel legal report. He destroyed his own future. Securities fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion. I didn't make him commit these crimes. I just documented them. I turned to the assembled relatives, many of whom had investments with Colton. You might want to check your portfolios. Sable Ridge Developments was delisted by Bridgewater Equity this morning. The FBI's white-collar crime division received an anonymous tip about the interstate gambling fund transfers, though I suppose it's not anonymous anymore. Uncle Stewart went pale. My retirement fund is probably gone, I confirmed, but you can file claims with the FDIC if any of it was in insured accounts. Mother sank into a chair, her perfect composure finally cracking. Why, I walked to the main display wall and pulled up one final image, a photo from my childhood. 7-year-old me, holding a blueprint I'd drawn of my dream venue, standing next to Colton at one of Father's construction sites. He was wearing a hard hat. I was wearing a dress Mother had forced me into. My drawings crumpled in Father's hand because little girls don't need to worry about buildings. You had 2 children, I said quietly. You chose to see only one. Layla cleared her throat. Ms. Walsh-Nova. I'd like to proceed with the wedding. Without him. She looked at Colton with cold precision. I'll be filing my own charges for financial fraud within our personal accounts. My father is a federal prosecutor. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you stealing from my trust fund? The beauty of it all hit me. Then I hadn't destroyed Colton's wedding. I'd saved an innocent woman from binding herself to a criminal while ensuring she got the celebration she deserved. The contract can be transferred to your name alone, I told Layla. No penalties, no additional fees. Consider it a wedding gift from one woman who knows her worth to another who's just discovering hers. Mother stood, shaking. You're enjoying this? No, I said, meeting her eyes for the first time in years as an equal. I'm ending it. 3 years ago. I stopped waiting for you to see me. Tonight. I'm simply showing you what you missed. I pulled out the notice of cancellation for cause. Colton, you have 72 hours to pay the 35% penalty for fraudulent representation. That's $26,250. Mother, as guarantor, you're jointly liable. Kestrel Legal will handle collection. The rain had stopped, leaving only the sound of dripping water from the eaves and Mother's quiet sobbing. The golden key charm on her bracelet caught the light one last time as she covered her face with her hands. The rehearsal dinner is paid for, I said, gesturing to the perfectly set tables, the flowers they'd never know I'd arranged myself, the lights I'd hung while they thought I was nobody. Enjoy your evening. Security will escort you out at 9 p.m. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Colton, your password for everything is still Touchdown King 88. Even your encrypted files about the judge you've been bribing in the zoning commission. Judge Martinez, wasn't it? He's also received an anonymous tip. The last thing I saw before ascending my stairs was Father's face. Finally recognizing the construction of my revenge, every joint perfectly planned, every beam precisely placed, the entire structure built to withstand any storm they could throw at it. At the top of the stairs, I turned back once more. Welcome to the mill at Silverfield, where we build celebrations, not illusions. The next 72 hours unfolded with the precision of a Swiss watch mechanism I'd wound 3 years ago. From my office, I orchestrated the complete dismantling of the Hartley Empire while ensuring Layla Pierce received the wedding she deserved, a study in surgical vengeance that left no innocent casualties. At 9:15 p.m. that same evening, immediately after security had escorted the Hartley contingent out, I initiated the vendor shield notice. Every supplier, from the florist to the caterer to the string quartet, received an encrypted message. Per Section 18 of our vendor agreement, please be advised that Colton Hartley is no longer authorized to negotiate on behalf of this event. All communications should be directed to Ms. Layla Pierce or the mill's management. Any attempts at solicitation of kickbacks or unauthorized discounts will result in immediate blacklisting per our non-solicitation clause. Within an hour, 7 vendors responded with their own evidence of Colton's attempted schemes. The photographer forwarded texts where Colton promised to make problems if he didn't receive 40% cash back. The florist had recordings of him suggesting they bill for premium arrangements while delivering budget alternatives. Each piece of evidence was forwarded to Kestrel Legal and added to the FBI file. At midnight, the UCC filing went live. Every asset Colton had used as collateral, including decorations, deposits, even the engagement photos now had a lien against them. The beauty of the Uniform Commercial Code was its immediate effect. By morning, his credit score would plummet by 200 points. Thursday arrived with consequences cascading like dominoes I'd set up months ago. At 8 a.m., Harbor Light Lending Company received my vendor risk bulletin, a courtesy notice that one of their borrowers, Sable Ridge Developments, had been implicated in fraud at my venue. Given that I'd never missed a payment and had actually paid off my loan 18 months early, they took my word seriously. By 10 a.m., Colton's construction sites went silent. Harbor Light had frozen his credit line, and without Friday's payroll, his workers walked off. The mechanics' liens would follow within days, but the work stoppage alone would trigger penalty clauses in his contracts worth millions. Mother called 43 times that morning. I let each go to voicemail, saving them all. Her progression from rage to bargaining to desperation created an audio documentary of a narcissist losing control. Nova, please, we're family. This will destroy your father's reputation. You've made your point. I'll apologize publicly if that's what you want. Please don't do this to your brother. Never once did she say she was sorry for how she'd treated me. Never once did she acknowledge what she'd done. It was always about them, their reputation, their loss. At 2 p.m., I met with Layla in the venue's library. She'd brought her father, Marcus Pierce, a man whose name made white-collar criminals sweat. He reviewed my documentation with professional appreciation. This is the cleanest case of fraud I've seen in 20 years, he said. Your evidence chain is impeccable. Did you have legal training? Self-taught, I replied. When your family owns a construction company but won't teach you the business because you're female, you learn to build your own foundations. Layla signed the amended contract, transferring everything to her name. The wedding is in 2 days. Can we really pull this off without complications? Every vendor has been notified of the change. Your deposits are secure in escrow. The only thing different will be the groom, though I assume you have plans for that. She smiled, cold and sharp. My best friend from law school has been in love with me for years. He's actually the one who helped me trace Colton's financial fraud. He's flying in from Chicago tonight. Then let me gift you something, I said, pulling out a revised contract. The Platinum Package upgrade, compliments of the mill. Consider it an investment in your future and a thank you for having the courage to walk away. Friday morning brought the killing blow. The FBI raid on Sable Ridge Development's office happened at exactly 9 a.m., timed for maximum visibility. Local news crews, tipped off by an anonymous source, captured Colton being led out in handcuffs. The headline wrote itself, "Prominent developer arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme." But the real destruction came from the investigation's scope. Because Mother was listed as a 20% owner, agents also appeared at the Hartley family home. They didn't arrest her, but they seized computers, documents, and most devastatingly, Father's business records. He'd been letting Colton use Hartley construction trucks and equipment off the books, a tax violation that would trigger its own investigation. At 11 a.m., I received a text from an unknown number. "This is Roy Hartley. We need to talk." I agreed to meet him at 1 p.m., but not at the mill. Instead, I chose Meridian Coffee, a small shop downtown where I'd spent countless hours during college, studying alone because family dinners weren't worth the humiliation. Father looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie crooked. He didn't even complain when he had to order his own coffee, no secretary, no Colton to fetch it for him. Why was all he said. I pulled out a stack of letters, yellowed with age. "Do you remember these?" His face went white. They were the letters I'd written him from college, telling him about my ideas for adaptive reuse architecture, my plans for sustainable development, my dreams of building something meaningful. Letters he'd never answered, but that I'd discovered he'd kept, filed away in a drawer marked Nova Miscellaneous. "You kept them but never responded," I said. "You knew I had the ability. You just didn't think I had the right to use it." "You could have joined the company after Colton. After Colton what ran it into the ground, made me his secretary, I built something worth 3 times what Hartley Construction makes annually, and I did it in 3 years, alone, without a single lesson from you, without a dollar of family money, without even the courtesy of your belief in my capabilities." He stared into his coffee. "I thought I was protecting you. This business is brutal." "No," I said, standing. "You were protecting yourselves from the possibility that your daughter might be better at it than your son." I left him there with the letters and one final document, a purchase offer for Hartley Construction. Not at market value, but at the fire sale price it would command once the tax investigation destroyed its reputation. The offer was good for 30 days, submitted through Willow and Stone Holdings. "It's the only lifeline you'll get," I said. "I'll keep the employees, honor the contracts, maintain the Hartley name on the trucks, but you and Mother will have no involvement. Sign it over, or watch it disappear entirely." Saturday arrived crisp and perfect, the kind of Colorado morning that made the mill's windows blaze with light. Layla's wedding proceeded flawlessly. Her law school friend turned out to be charming, successful, and genuinely devoted to her. The photos would be spectacular once we digitally removed Colton from the engagement shots, per the new contract's terms. During the reception, as I watched from my office, my phone buzzed with a notification from Kestrel Legal. "Marla Hartley has agreed to the full penalty amount. Payment plan approved. First installment received. $26,250, paid in monthly installments that would remind her for the next 2 years of the price of her cruelty." The final twist came at 8:47 p.m. as the reception wound down. A marshal appeared with federal paperwork. Colton's assets had been frozen pending investigation, including his share of any family trusts. The wedding gifts, already transferred to Layla's name only, were safe. But the Hartley family fortune, built on decades of favoritism toward their golden son, was now locked in legal limbo that would take years and hundreds of thousands in legal fees to resolve. I stood at my window, watching the last guests leave, the Edison lights casting their warm glow on a celebration that had transformed from a testament to fraud into a triumph of truth. Below, Layla and her new husband danced on the wooden floor I'd restored by hand, surrounded by flowers I'd arranged myself. Under lights I'd hung while my family thought I was nothing. The mill at Silverfield stood empty at 11:43 p.m. its silence more complete than the night I'd first walked through its ruins. I moved through the space methodically, turning off each strand of Edison bulbs, watching the golden glow fade section by section until only the emergency exits cast their green whisper across the reclaimed pine floors. The rain had returned, gentler now, tapping against the windows like an old friend saying goodbye to a perfect performance. I could smell the lingering traces of the evening roses from Layla's bouquet, the ghost of champagne in the air, the cedar and bergamot polish that had become my signature. Every scent told the story of a victory that tasted exactly as I'd imagined it would, not sweet, not bitter, just complete. In my office, the glass cube that had been my war room for 3 years, I signed the final document of the evening, not a contract this time, but a simple receipt acknowledging payment received. Layla had insisted on paying the full platinum package price despite my offer to gift it. "Women who know their worth don't take charity," she'd said. "They take what they've earned." I respected that. The computer screen showed the final tally of the day's transactions. The Mills account had grown by $35,000, the penalty payment from Mother plus Layla's fee. Sable Ridge Development's website now showed a federal seizure notice. Hartley Construction's stock had dropped 40% in after-hours trading. I pulled up the security footage one last time, watching the moment Mother's face crumbled when she realized her daughter wasn't the failure she'd painted for 33 years. I didn't save it. I didn't need to. Some victories are better left unrecorded, living only in the memory of those who witnessed them. My phone buzzed with a notification from Kestrel Legal. Final update: Colton Hartley denied bail due to flight risk. Trial date set for March. Estimated sentence 5 to 7 years minimum. I turned off the screen without responding. There was nothing left to say. I walked to the wall where I'd hung a single frame, not the motivational quotes other venues displayed, but something more honest. "We build celebrations, not illusions." Below it, smaller text read, "N. Walsh, owner." No need for the full name anymore. Everyone who mattered now knew exactly who N. Walsh was. The irony of it all still amazed me. They'd spent 33 years telling me I was incomplete without their approval, without a husband, without following their prescribed path. But I'd built something extraordinary not despite being alone, but because of it. No one to compromise my vision. No one to tell me to dream smaller. No one to insist that women don't understand construction or contracts or complex financial instruments. I locked the filing cabinet containing all the evidence not because I needed it anymore, but because it represented 3 years of methodical planning that deserved to be preserved. Someday, I might donate it to a business school as a case study in patient, legal revenge. Or maybe I'd just keep it as a reminder that the best response to being underestimated is overwhelming competence. The last light I turned off was in the entry hall, where just hours ago I'd descended those stairs to reveal myself. The space fell into darkness except for the moonlight streaming through the original windows I'd insisted on restoring. The building seemed to exhale, settling into its bones with a sound like satisfaction. I set the alarm a 7-digit code that wasn't my birthday or any significant date my family would know, but the day I'd signed the papers to buy this place. February 19th, 2019, the day I stopped being their disappointment and started being my own success. Outside, the parking lot was empty except for my Tesla, another purchase my family never knew about because they'd never asked what I drove. The car started silently, its dashboard showing 1:47 a.m. I had a meeting at 9 with a potential buyer for Hartley Construction, someone Father would hate but couldn't afford to refuse. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of the mill in my rearview mirror, its silhouette proud against the star-scattered Colorado sky. Tomorrow, there would be 3 more events: a corporate retreat, a charity gala, and a renewal of vows for a couple celebrating their 40th anniversary, all booked solid through 2027, all contracts ironclad, all payments flowing through the proper channels. The radio was playing something soft and forgettable, but I turned it off, preferring the sound of the rain on the windshield and the hum of tires on wet asphalt. My phone, mounted on the dashboard, showed 17 missed calls from various Hartley family members. I selected all and deleted them without listening. That chapter was closed. At the intersection of Main and Silverfield Road, I had a choice left toward my downtown loft, or right toward the highway that led out of Colorado entirely. I'd been thinking about expanding, maybe buying another distressed property in Wyoming or Utah. The mill had taught me that the best investments were the ones others couldn't see the potential in. But that was tomorrow's decision. Tonight. I turned left, heading home to my loft where no family photos hung on the walls, where no voices told me I wasn't enough, where the only expectations were the ones I set for myself. The last text of the night came from an unexpected source, Diego, my bar manager. Ms. Walsh, just wanted you to know that the staff pooled together to buy you something. It's in your office for Monday. We all wanted to say thank you for showing us that standing up for what's right is always worth it. I smiled, the first genuine smile of the entire evening. Not the calculated expression I'd worn during the confrontation, not the professional courtesy I'd shown Layla, but a real smile for people who'd stood by me without even knowing who I really was. The rain stopped as I pulled into my building's garage, the clouds parting to reveal a scatter of stars over the mountains. Somewhere in the city, my parents were probably awake, trying to figure out how to salvage their reputation. Somewhere else, Colton was spending his first night in federal custody. His golden boy status evaporated like morning mist. But here, in this moment, Nova Hartley, architect of her own revenge, owner of her own destiny, alone at 33 by choice rather than circumstance, was exactly where she wanted to be. I turned off the engine and sat in the silence for a moment, savoring the absolute completion of a plan 3 years in the making. Then I gathered my things, locked the car, and walked to the elevator that would take me up to my life, the one I'd built myself. Beam by beam, contract by contract, without asking anyone's permission or approval. The elevator doors closed on a reflection I finally recognized successful, solitary, and completely, satisfactorily whole. The mill at Silverfield would open again tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp, ready to host more celebrations built on truth rather than illusion. And I would be there, in my glass office above it all, signing contracts and building dreams my own and others exactly as I'd always wanted. The golden key charm that had once symbolized everything they'd denied me now lay at the bottom of Clear Creek, where I'd thrown it on my drive home. Let the river carry their expectations away. I had my own keys now, and they opened doors to kingdoms I'd built myself. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're hearing this. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story of patience and justice resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. What would you have done in Nova's shoes?